The story I'm about to tell you is one I never imagined sharing. But sometimes, life throws us into situations that make us question everything we thought we knew about ourselves and the people around us. It all started when my step-grandson came to visit. I had always been close to him, like family should be, but there was something different this time. He wasn't the young boy I had seen grow up, he had changed. He was older, more mature, and there was an air about him that made things feel a bit off. But at the time, I couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was. He came into my house, as he always did. We greeted each other warmly, and I felt the familiarity, the bond we had always shared. But that day, something was different. There was a tension in the air, an unspoken word hanging between us. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just in my head. But deep down, I knew something was happening. Something that made me uneasy. We spent the day together, chatting about the usual things. But every time I looked at him, I noticed the way his eyes lingered a bit longer than usual, the way his gestures seemed to carry a hidden meaning. And that's when it hit me. My step-grandson, the boy I had watched grow up, was now a man, and he was looking at me differently. It wasn't just the way he looked at me, it was the way he spoke, the things he said. A casual touch on my shoulder that lingered too long, the way he smiled when he thought I wasn't paying attention. These subtle signs started adding up, and I couldn't ignore them anymore. At first, I was in denial. I told myself it was nothing. That maybe I was just being paranoid. But with each passing moment, the tension grew stronger, more palpable. The boundaries we had once shared, the ones that made our relationship simple and innocent, were slowly starting to blur. That evening, as we sat together in the living room, the atmosphere shifted. I felt an undeniable urge to tell him to stop, to set the boundaries straight. But something inside me held back. Was it the familiarity of his presence? Was it the lingering emotions of the past that made me feel connected to him in a way that I shouldn't? I couldn't say. The next few hours were a blur. We shared a quiet moment, just sitting there, when I felt him move closer to me. And then, in that moment, it happened. My step-grandson crossed the line, and I let him. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, and it's one I've regretted since. But in that moment, when everything felt so raw and complicated, I gave in. I didn't know why. Perhaps it was a need for comfort, or perhaps it was the moment of vulnerability I was experiencing. But whatever the reason, I allowed myself to cross a line I could never go back from. The truth is, what happened that day has haunted me ever since. The guilt, the shame, the constant questions I asked myself. Was I wrong? Was I just weak? Was there something inside me that craved attention in a way I didn't understand? Looking back, I know I made a mistake. And it's a mistake that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. But the thing is, life isn't always so black and white. Sometimes, we make choices that we can't take back, and we have to learn to live with the consequences. But here's the part that no one talks about, the part that people don't want to hear. The aftermath. The emotional chaos that follows when boundaries are blurred and relationships are forever altered. It's not just about the mistake itself, it's about how it changes everything that comes after. The guilt, the secrets, the constant wondering if anyone will ever understand. It's a painful journey, one that I would never wish on anyone. But through it all, I've come to understand that we all have our flaws, our weaknesses, and our struggles. And sometimes, it's those very moments that shape who we are and how we move forward. The lesson I've learned is simple, but not easy. We must always be aware of the lines we draw, the boundaries we set, and the respect we owe to the people we love. Because once those lines are crossed, things will never be the same. The consequences of that moment have echoed through my life in ways I could never have imagined. As much as I tried to push it out of my mind, there were reminders everywhere I turned. The way we interacted afterward, the awkward silences that grew longer with each passing day. Every time I saw him, I was reminded of that night, and it seemed impossible to move forward. But the most challenging part wasn't just dealing with my own guilt. It was the realization that what had happened between us could never be undone. I couldn't just pretend like it was a mistake that could be erased with an apology or an explanation. No, it wasn't that simple. The emotional weight of what had transpired lingered, and I found myself questioning my entire sense of self. I tried to distract myself with other things, work, family, hobbies, but nothing felt the same anymore. Even when I tried to convince myself that I was fine, deep down, I knew I wasn't. And that's when I began to understand something important. The emotions I was experiencing were not just a result of guilt or shame, they were the consequences of betrayal, not just of my relationship with him, but of the trust that had always existed between us. Every time we spoke, I could feel a shift. It was like we were both walking on eggshells, unsure of what to say or how to act around each other. The once comfortable bond we shared felt fragile, like it could shatter at any moment. And while I knew that what had happened was irreversible, I still found myself yearning for things to go back to how they used to be but they couldn't. And that was perhaps the hardest truth I had to come to terms with: things would never be the same again. Not only had I betrayed him, but I had also betrayed the person I thought I was. How could I ever trust myself again? How could I look in the mirror and see someone who could make such a terrible choice? As time went on, the emotional toll became harder to ignore. I found myself grappling with feelings of isolation and confusion. How could I ever face my family after what had happened? How could I explain something so deeply personal and painful, especially when I didn't fully understand it myself? There were moments when I thought I might never heal from it. The emotional scars felt permanent. I was stuck in this internal battle, questioning every decision I had made leading up to that moment. But the truth is, there is no easy way to move on from something like this. It takes time to reflect, to understand, and to rebuild. And while I still carry the weight of that mistake with me, I've learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean erasing the past. It means learning to live with it, to understand the lessons it teaches, and to move forward with the knowledge that we are not defined by our mistakes, but by how we choose to grow from them. I've realized that life is messy. We make mistakes, and sometimes we make decisions that lead us down paths we never thought we'd walk. But in the end, it's not about avoiding mistakes, it's about learning from them and finding the strength to rebuild ourselves when we've fallen. But healing isn't a linear journey. Just when I thought I was beginning to accept what happened, there would be another moment, another glance, another conversation, that would bring everything crashing back. It's like a wound that never truly heals, only to be reopened at the most unexpected times. For a while, I kept my distance, thinking that might make things easier. But the emotional pull was strong. Every time we were in the same room, I could feel that tension still lingering, as if we both were waiting for the other to acknowledge what had happened. But neither of us said anything. What became increasingly clear was that we were both trapped in this limbo. He, perhaps, felt the weight of what had transpired, but like me, struggled to understand how to fix what was broken. There was a part of me that wanted him to approach the situation, to bring it to the surface so we could face it together. But the longer it went on without discussion, the harder it became. Silence became our shared language. But I knew, deep down, that silence wasn't going to heal us. It was only prolonging the inevitable, this moment of reckoning where we would need to confront the reality of what had happened. And as the days turned into weeks, I began to realize that no matter how hard I tried to bury the guilt or push away the shame, it was part of me now. It had shaped my every action and decision since that night. It wasn't just about what had happened between us, it was about the larger picture, too. I had betrayed my own values, my own principles. I had let myself down in a way that was deeper than I could articulate. And the hardest part was that I couldn't explain it to anyone. How do you explain something so complicated, so painful, to the people you care about? Eventually, I realized that avoiding confrontation wasn't going to get me anywhere. It wasn't healthy for either of us. The truth needed to come out, whether it was painful or not. We needed to address the elephant in the room and come to terms with the fact that our relationship had changed, forever. But that didn't mean it was beyond repair. I had to summon the courage to face him, to look him in the eye and tell him how much regret I carried for what had happened. I wasn't sure what I expected from him in return. Maybe forgiveness, maybe understanding, or maybe just the opportunity to say the words I had kept bottled up for so long. The day I finally spoke to him was one I will never forget. It was awkward and emotional, filled with unsaid words and heavy silences. But it was also a moment of clarity, a moment when the burden of guilt started to feel a little lighter. I told him how deeply sorry I was, not just for the betrayal, but for the confusion, the emotional toll that it had taken on both of us. To my surprise, he didn't react the way I thought he would. He didn't get angry, nor did he act like nothing had happened. Instead, he simply listened. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like we were on the same page, acknowledging the pain and the hurt, both from the past and from the present. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. Acknowledging the hurt and the mistake was the first step toward healing. It wasn't about erasing the past or pretending that everything was okay. It was about making a commitment to move forward, together, in a way that respected the boundaries and the relationship we had left. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, and there would be times when the past would resurface, but I had learned something important. Healing starts with honesty, and it starts with facing the truth, no matter how difficult it may be. In the end, it's not the mistakes we make that define us, it's how we choose to learn from them, how we choose to grow. And as painful as this journey has been, I've come to realize that it is through the most difficult moments that we find our true strength.